The deep state is literally bragging about their conspiracy to overthrow President Trump. I'm not even kidding. Stay tuned. This is just an incredible story. Normally when we're talking about the deep state, we're talking about what's going on behind the scenes. Well, now it's not even behind the scenes anymore. Now they're literally shouting it from the rooftops. So I want to point you to one of the deep state's primary propaganda organs in the United States. It's called Time Magazine, and we'll get into the background there in a little bit. Literally founded by a skull and bonesman, literally involved in promoting CIA propaganda to the American people as part of Operation Mockingbird. We'll come back to that. But they just ran an article, and you have to read it to believe it. You have to see it for yourself, and I encourage you, it's important. Go read this article after you finish watching this video. It's important, guys. This is the official narrative that they want to peddle to the American people and to future generations. This is the narrative they hope is going to go in the history books, so it's important. So in their propaganda article, it's called The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. This is written by a propagandist. I'm not even going to call her a journalist because she's not one. A propagandist, Molly Ball. And she is bragging about what she herself refers to as a conspiracy. Okay, her word, conspiracy, over and over and over again. At least half a dozen times they use the word conspiracy in this propaganda piece of big government, big business, big tech, big labor, and all these other powerful forces to oust the president from the White House. Talks about this behind-the-scenes operation. And we warned in this program, Behind the Deep State, in September, we warned you that the forces of the deep state were planning a color revolution to oust the president of the United States using some of the very mechanisms that are outlined in this Time Magazine article. You need to see this. Now, color revolutions, if you didn't watch that episode, you should go back and watch it because it's eerie how similar it is. But color revolutions is a term that's been applied to these efforts to overthrow governments. Really, the CIA and the State Department, along with their friends in the UK and France and some of these others, have been waging these. And they send in their subversives, and they overthrow governments using a combination of phony protests, astroturf movements, media propaganda, claims of fraud or claims of not fraud, things like that. And they become very, very good at doing this. It's pretty amazing how they have been able to get away with it in country after country after country. And one of the things that we warned about in September when we were warning about these things was that the very same people involved in overthrowing foreign governments for the State Department and the CIA were involved in the same kind of program here in the United States. And as you read this Time Magazine, you're going to see they have a gentleman quoted twice. His name is Norm Eisen. Okay, Norm Eisen. We warned about Norm Eisen. This is the guy, he was like the main color revolution operative at the U.S. government. He actually wrote the playbook, they call it the playbook, on how to overthrow foreign governments. Now, they don't mention this in the Time Magazine article. They just call him an Obama-era official and a lawyer. Oh, how cute. But he's much more than an Obama-era official and a lawyer. He's literally the guy who wrote the playbook on color revolutions. They don't mention that again in the Time Magazine article, but he is the minion who followed on after the original color revolution people, and unbelievable stuff. This is the guy they quote in Time Magazine twice talking about this craziness. And he says in Time Magazine, the untold story of the election is the thousands of people of both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its very foundation. Interesting. You don't think the readers of Time Magazine deserve to know that this is the guy who specializes in overthrowing governments? What kind of propaganda piece wouldn't think to mention that clever little detail? He goes on to say that the scariest moment in the election was when in Michigan, the legislature almost stopped the fraud, or what they believed to be fraud, and sent Trump delegates, and when they almost didn't certify the allegedly fraudulent results out of Detroit. That was the scariest moment in the election for Mr. Eisen. But again, no mention of the fact that this is the guy who overthrows governments for a living. They just describe him as a prominent lawyer and former Obama administration official who recruited Republicans and Democrats to the board of the Voter Protection Program. Okay, this is a regime change professional. This is a guy who specializes in overthrowing governments. Here he is involved in a conspiracy to overthrow the elected president of the United States, and we're going to treat him like he's some kind of celebrity when we quote him in the deep state's propaganda organs. Unbelievable. So if you read this article by Time Magazine, she says and I'm quoting here, there was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. She actually says Trump was right about this hidden plot to oust him from office. She goes on to say that both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. She continues and says that the conspiracy involved, and I'm quoting here, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. Exactly what we were warning about here at the New American, exactly what the censors and the fraudulent fact checkers said we were making up, and of course, we were proven to be correct. Time Magazine can say it because they are Time Magazine. And so this Ball character, really pathetic. I'll quote what she says later. She's just so pleased to be a good little lapdog for the establishment and parrot their propaganda. It really is pathetic that journalists would degrade themselves in this way. But no opportunity for Trump or any of his people to comment. They didn't even reach out to them to comment, any of the victims of this monstrosity. And so one of the examples of this conspiracy that she gives, you had the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which we've talked about before, a globalist alliance of mega globalist businesses who are interested in opening the borders and merging us in with the New World Order and all the rest of it, and the far left AIL-CIO, the massive gangster operation, the labor union, big labor. And they came together and they put together this letter. Incredible. And supposedly, according to Time Magazine, they were stopping Trump's assault on democracy by having a conspiracy to overthrow him. Yeah, that's interesting. And as you read this, she says the handshake between business and labor was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election. Oh, that's interesting. Loosely organized coalition of operatives, she says. And there was conservatives. She doesn't mention that these are phony, never Trump conservatives, but that's obvious, of course. And this is how she describes what these conspirators were doing. It's a direct quote. Their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. Let's break that down. Yes, they got states to change laws. They didn't get legislatures to change laws. The U.S. Constitution is very clear. Legislatures determine how the electors are going to be selected, not governors, not secretaries of states, and not state courts or federal courts. And yet they used all of those other mechanisms to change the laws, not the legitimate way, which was the legislatures. Yes, they changed voting systems. They got a whole bunch of states to adopt Dominion. Hey, that was cute. They also got hundreds of millions of dollars in public and private funding. So they went to, for example, Mark Zuckerberg, the guy who hates us and keeps putting fake fact checks on our true news reports, to fund this. Hundreds of millions of dollars. You couldn't give it directly to Joe Biden because that would be illegal. So, hey, let's give it to the election process so we can corrupt the election. Continuing, they fended off voter suppression lawsuits, which means efforts to make sure only legal voters are actually voting. They recruited armies of poll workers and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. No reference to the dead people who voted, no reference to the illegal immigrants who voted, no reference to the people who showed up at their polling place to vote and were told, hey, somebody already voted for you. That's weird. Fill out a provisional ballot. Okay, no reference to any of those things. There's no truth in this article. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. She says they pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation, which of course means true information that looks bad for the establishment or their preferred candidate. Used data-driven strategies to fight viral smears, also known as viral truth. She says they executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over days or weeks. Okay, and I warned about this. I got emails from people. How did you know that's what they were going to do? I actually preached at a French church in Oklahoma, and that video has gone out there about the deep state. And I said, look, here's what's going to happen. This was in October. I said, here's what's going to happen in the election. You're going to see Trump win in a landslide, and you're going to see on TV Trump winning, and then they're going to say, look, we found all kinds of new ballots, and they're coming in the mail, and we got to count longer, and they're going to count, and they're going to count, and they're going to find more and more ballots until finally they find enough to push them over the edge in those key swing states, and boom, shakalaka, then they have a President Biden. It's exactly what they did, and here she's bragging about it. They executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over days or weeks, preventing Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory from getting more traction. Okay, and then after Election Day, They monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. Okay, unbelievable, guys. This is exactly what we said was going to happen in September. It's exactly what we got in trouble for with the big tech companies for warning was going to happen. And they knew all along. This article says the big tech titans were all involved. They knew they were deceiving you, dear Facebook user, dear YouTube viewer. The people who you are depending on to get your information tricked you. They lied to you, and they did it on purpose. Okay, and it just gets more and more crazy, guys. This was basically a standard color revolution. Unbelievable how they did this. Now, other key people in this operation, one of the ones that's talked about quite a bit in the magazine is a schemer from the AFL-CIO. His name is Mike Podhorzer. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. He's painted as one of the lead guys behind all of this, but he brought together this huge cabal of co-conspirators, including the mass-murdering baby butchers at Planned Parenthood, including the environmental lunatics at Greenpeace, including the George Soros-funded MoveOn.org, the Marxist-led Black Lives Matter movement. Go back and watch our videos about the Black Lives Matter. The founders of the Black Lives Matter movement admit that they're Marxist. They're in bed with the mass murdering dictator of Venezuela, and they post pictures of him with them on social media. Okay, they admit that they're in communication with ancestor spirits. Right, go back and watch our videos about the Black Lives Matter if you want to know who is involved in all of this. They say key figures from Congress were involved. They don't name them, but I bet you Mitch McConnell was in there. Big tech totalitarians in Silicon Valley. State officials were brought into the conspiracy. Facebook money helped to finance it all. They used big tech censorship and their algorithms to suppress Trump and his supporters under the guise of stopping disinformation. And they also admit, this is huge, okay, in this article, in this Time Magazine article, they admit that if it looked like the campaign to save the election from the American people was not working, they had on the ready all across the country a network of rent-a-mob protesters that were going to flood out into the streets and were going to terrorize the American people unless and until they submit to this operation. Now, there are also numerous blatant falsehoods in this propaganda piece by Ball. And anybody can verify this, right? She says, for example, that on November 7th, jubilation broke out and people thronged cities across the U.S. to celebrate the democratic process that resulted in Trump's ouster. Actually, that's not what happened. Unless you live in New York and Los Angeles, and unless you consider a small group of fringe people to be throngs of people, that's just a flat-out lie. If you look across most of America, even if you look at the media's fake polls, okay, the media's fake polls showed almost every Republican believed the election was rigged, and about a third of Democrats believed the election was rigged. And that's the fake media polls, the same ones that told us Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide. My guess is probably significantly more people thought the election was rigged. They're tricking you, right? There wasn't throngs of people across America going into the cities. There was real throngs. In fact, most people who were very concerned about voter fraud, who were very upset by what was happening. There was no jubilation breaking out here. We are being deceived in a ridiculous manner. Now, this propaganda piece never mentions the evidence for voter fraud, never mentions the hundreds, maybe thousands of affidavits that were filed in cases across America. They never mention that most of the cases that have gone their way through court, where the evidence has been presented, have been ruled in Trump's favor, right? They no mention of any of that. She also lies about what Trump said. She says that Trump urged his supporters in D.C. to, quote, go to the Capitol and fight like hell. That is an absolute bald-faced lie. There's no charitable way of framing that. It's just a lie. Okay, if you actually watched the speech that Trump gave, he said he declared it as a fact that we fight like hell. And he said, if you don't fight like hell, we're not going to have a country anymore. And that is true. If you don't fight like hell, we're not going to have a country anymore. That is just a fact. He did not urge anyone to use violence. And actually what he says in his speech, and anybody can verify this, he urged his supporters to, and I'm quoting, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Why would Time Magazine lie about something that anybody could verify? It's because they think you're stupid. They think you're not going to go and look it up yourself. They think that they can distort history and lie, and that that's what's going to end up in the history books. We have to make sure that that's not what happens. She also lied and said that Trump had called the rioters at the Capitol very special. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. He called his supporters very special, and he condemned the rioters on multiple occasions. And anybody can verify that for themselves. Now, I want to talk about Time Magazine real quick, because Time Magazine is a critical organ of deep state propaganda, and it has been for decades. That was founded by a guy called Henry Luce, a member of the Skull and Bones Secret Society at Yale. If you have not watched our episode on the Skull and Bones Society, you should. It's important. Basically, this is a secret society. I've got a couple books about it behind me from Anthony Sutton. There's actually been videos that have been released. ABC News actually ran one where they caught them doing weird death rituals and doing mock executions and stabbings, and they're sitting in a coffin and they're doing sex acts. I mean, it's just weird stuff, screaming like a bunch of banshees. And these are, again, leaders of the world, right? And one of the strategies that Anthony Sutton mentions that the Skull and Bones Society uses, he says it's a recruiting ground for a conspiracy to create a one-world government. This is a Stanford historian, probably one of the most important historians in American history. He says one of the ways that they do that is by trying to control both sides of the debate or the argument. And so we saw that perfectly in 2004. And I want to show you a little clip. We had, on one side, we had George W. Bush. On the other side, we had John Kerry. Both were members of Skull and Bones. Watch this clip.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
And we'll be watching. Be safe on the campaign trail. John Kerry, thanks for joining us. And we'll be right back.
So, the founder of this publication was a member of Skull and Bones. Another member of Skull and Bones, speaking of controlling both sides of the narrative, was William Buckley, okay, the conservative hero, according to the New York Times and the Washington Compost, that wouldn't know truth or conservatism if it hit him in the face, okay? That is what they do. They put out fake conservatives and they put out fake liberals, and then they try to control both sides of the discussion. So the founder of Time magazine, Henry Luce, was a member of Skull and Bones. He also was a key player in the CIA's Operation Mockingbird. Now, this was back in the 50s, where the CIA put hundreds of pseudo-journalists, I call them prostitutes because they're willing to sell themselves out, to parrot CIA propaganda to the American people. So CIA gives them money, CIA gives them CIA talking points, they go and pretend like these are legitimate talking points, like this is legitimate news. And Henry Luce was one of the guys involved in this disgrace of American journalism. Now, Ball is especially pathetic. You know, back in the day, back during Operation Mockingbird, those guys would have been horrified to have been known as prostitutes for the CIA, as prostitutes for the establishment. Ball appears to love it, okay? This is what she says. She's so thrilled that they chose her as their little poodle to pat on the head and spread this disinformation. She says, this cabal of conspirators, participants want the secret history of the 2020 election to be told. And hey, they chose Ball to tell it. Isn't that cute? She says the inside story of the conspiracy, at least the propaganda version of the conspiracy that the conspirators want you to believe, came from her exclusive access to, and I'm quoting here, the group's inner workings, never before seen documents, and interviews with dozens of those involved from across the political spectrum. Yeah, totalitarian to totalitarian light. That's cute. So basically, Time magazine and their prostitute journalists are now bragging about the fact that they are mouthpieces for the deep state cabal of conspirators who they say took over this election. Let that sink in, guys. Let that sink in. You're being played. They think you're a fool. They think you're an idiot. And they think you're going to think it's cute that your country was stolen from you by a conspiracy, a cabal of powerful people. Okay? Let that sink in, folks. They're bragging about it. They're rubbing your nose in it, okay? We here at the New American Magazine, we don't do that. We stand up to powerful people. We stand up to lies. We stand up to dishonesty. When appropriate, we try to bring you both sides of the story, right? So we quote the dishonest propagandist, then we give you the truth. They don't even bother quoting the people who were victims of this conspiracy. They just want you to accept it. But as terrible as it seems that they're out there bragging about it, there is a little glimmer of hope here, a silver lining, if you will. One of them is that this is now going viral across the United States. People all over the country are realizing they're being lied to, they're being deceived, their suspicions about the 2020 election were confirmed, and guess what, guys? Conspiracy is still a crime, okay? A very serious crime. People are charged with the crime of conspiracy all across this country every day of the week. And who knows? Maybe we'll see some accountability one day, God willing. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you share, you subscribe, you get this out, guys. The powers that be, the big tech tyrants, are never going to let this get out. So please, we depend on you guys to get it out. Share this link, send it to your friends, send it to your elected representatives, send it to everybody. Subscribe, sign up, get involved. Go to thenewamerican.com, download the video, share it, put it in other platforms, everything you can to get this out, guys. The information is critical. We've got to get it out or we're going to lose our country. Thank you, guys. Love you, and God bless you all. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, hit like, hit that little bell so that you'll be notified whenever we post new videos. And also, please make sure to share this video with your friends. Email is a great way to do it. Remember, there are powerful forces working to steal our freedom and destroy our country. We need to work together, expose those behind the deep state. Otherwise, you can kiss your liberties goodbye.